How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the Elbows Up podcast. In episode 19, we're going to be going over the first round of the NHL playoffs. So we're going to be reviewing each series and kind of what went right, what went wrong for every team, and everything like that. But before we get into that, I'm your host, Brett Potter. I'm here with my co-host, Keith Kilback. How's it going, buddy, and how have you been enjoying the playoffs?
I'm doing good. I've been loving the playoffs. I'm glad to be back. I'm getting used to the whole camera thing. I'm liking it. It's a big step, and yeah, as far as the playoffs go, we have so much to talk about. It's been unbelievable. This has been one of the best playoffs, like first rounds I've ever seen. Literally, like they probably broke some sort of record for overtimes or something. There was like three overtimes in almost every series. It was so much fun to watch. So yeah, we have a lot to cover.
Yeah, a lot of overtime and a lot of upsets. Like in both conferences, like just talking about the Bruins and the Avalanche, like those two, we thought they were going to go deep in the playoffs, and there's so much to cover with the Leafs finally getting over that hurdle. So I think we just kind of get right into it, and we're gonna start with the Western Conference and the Colorado Avalanche versus Seattle Kraken, and the Kraken won in seven. So that was not something I saw at all. Like the Kraken just played a complete team effort, and they didn't really have one guy that kind of stood on their head or like scored a bunch for them or like was over a point per game even. Like they just had like a complete team effort, and Bjorkstrand had a really good game seven. He had two goals, but besides that, it was kind of just like a complete team effort. And Grubauer kind of made the saves that he had to make, and yeah, like the Avalanche, you could say like you could tell that they were really missing some of their guys with Landeskog and Nichushkin. They were out, right? So they definitely played a big role in the success this year and last year. But I think also we noticed that the absence of Nazem Kadri was big this year, and um, for other teams, looking at the Oilers, even like the center depth is huge in the playoffs, and just being strong with the middle is going to get you far in the playoffs. So it's kind of it's too bad to see the Avalanche lose because of that. I would say that their depth wasn't really the strongest between the offseason regression and the injury. So it's kind of too bad to see that they couldn't play their full strength. But the Kraken are looking really good, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the later rounds too.
Yeah, it was an awesome series to watch. I didn't think that Seattle had a chance going in, right? Like, I think I took them in five and you took the sweep for
I think so.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, like, we'll get into the other series, but everybody's bracket is in shambles right
It's
now.
it's just
Like,
toast. Yeah.
everybody on planet Earth, like if you were one of the few people that took Florida to win, then there's no way you also took Seattle to win, right? So that like there's probably nobody's bracket is still alive right now. It's crazy. I don't think. I mean, the best regular season in NHL history, the best regular season team, and the defending champs both got eliminated on the same day.
Yeah.
like,
Who would have
like,
thought?
yeah, like
Like
I would call you crazy if you were to tell me that, like before the playoffs started. So, and that's what I love about hockey because I think that like this wouldn't happen in any other sport, and I think a large reason for that is the salary cap. Obviously, like in other leagues, teams can go over and just kind of spend what they want, and just you see in other leagues, it's usually the same teams. Like in the MLB, it's the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Astros, and in the NBA, it's always the Warriors and stuff. But in hockey, like anybody can be anybody on any night, right? And even in a series, like there's so much parity in the NHL, and that's why I love it. And I really hope that they, stick to a salary cap and they never kind of go to a soft cap.
yeah, I don't really see them going to like a soft cap or anything like that. I think that's like you said, that's one of the things that make hockey the best. But yeah, as far as the Kraken, they're gonna be going on to the Dallas Stars next round. So we're gonna kind of get into that series next, and they beat the Wild 4-2. Um, I think the big thing that I took from this round is that playoff Ottinger is probably just like the best goalie of all time. Like he's just insane. Like you can't beat him. He's so clutch when you need him to be. Like he's just so steady, and he doesn't let in any bad goals. Like he's just so consistent and so steady back there. So I think the Stars could go really far, maybe even the conference finals this year, just with Ottinger, and Rope Hintz has looked really good, and Jason Robertson has also looked really good too. So with those guys firing up front and their goaltending, I also think that they are gonna have a good chance of going pretty far.
Yeah, I mean, the save that Andre made in, I think it was game five in, I think it was Dallas. At the end of the game, like it was a 1 goal game, 3-2 Dallas, and Andre just robbed a guy from moving right to left. It was an unreal save, a game saver. Like he really shows up when he needs to in the playoffs. He's kind of like Carey Price almost, right? He just has that clutch in him, and yeah, like to touch on Rope Hands, it's awesome seeing him. This is almost like his coming out party. I mean, he's put up really good numbers the last few years, and I've been noticing it. I know I had him on my top 10 centers list that we did a few months ago, and
It's
you
not looking
disagree.
too bad anymore.
And I know you disagreed with me, and my dad was clowning on me,
Yeah.
but now, I think he's probably like around 11, 12 still, but I mean, I think he's leading the playoffs in points, right? Like he's got
Yeah, he
12
is.
points
He's got
in
12 and Drexler's
six.
got 11.
Yeah, 12 points in 6 games. So yeah, it's kind of his coming out party, and hopefully he starts to get more attention because I think he's probably the most underrated player in the league.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was definitely a really good series with the Wild, and but going on to our next series, we got the Jets versus the Golden Knights. I got a lot to say about this to be just as a Jets fan, but the Golden Knights won 4-1, and I'm not sure if you heard Bonus's comments about the Jets post game, kind of just saying that they rolled over and died, and this is a team that they showed in February when they just had no pushback at all, and uh, like a lot of people were kind of like saying that that wasn't the right thing to do, and he was throwing the team under the bus, which I see too. But I also think that that was a perfect thing to say for me because, like, I mean, I completely agree with him. And like looking at guys like PLD and Wheeler, like those guys just had no fight in them, and like it almost seemed like the team as a whole kind of gave up after that Morrissey injury. And then when Shifley went down early in Game 4, just after Morrissey got hurt in Game 3, like Shifley got hurt in the first 2 minutes of the game. It kind of just seemed like a balloon popped, like they were deflated and they really didn't really have any confidence going. And from there on out, they didn't score much either, and like they were just I don't know they were just a different team. And obviously they got Nikolai Ehlers back in Game 5, which helped a little bit, but it just did not fill the hole of that Shifley and Morrissey left. So it's really tough to see, any team, but especially your favorite team, kind of losing the playoffs when they're not having like all their guys.
Yeah, I mean, injuries are the worst, right? Everybody goes through it. It just sucks that it happened to be at this time. Like, I think Shifley and Morrissey were healthy all year, weren't they?
Yeah, for the
Until,
most part, yeah.
yeah, like until now. So it's just like super bad luck. They happen to both go down in the playoffs. Like, and then, yeah, that just happens. Everybody's, deals with injuries. But yeah, that's just something that the Jets couldn't really get over, and you can't really blame them. I mean, your number one defenseman, who's just huge offensively and defensively, penalty kill, power play, everything. Like he's playing 25 minutes. That's like probably your most valuable player, I guess, besides Hellebuck, right? Because of the amount that he's on the ice and what he means to the team. So you just can't replace a guy like that. It's such a huge hole to fill. And on top of that, your number one center's out too. So I mean, I think it would have been a closer series if those guys and Ehlers were both healthy for the whole thing. I think it could have went maybe 6, maybe 7, but I think Vegas was still going to win. They're just a better team.
Yeah, Vegas looked really good, and not knocking on them on anything, but like you said about injuries stuff like that. Like Shifley played 81 games this year, and Morrissey played 78, right? So pretty much for the whole season we had them, and it kind of just like that was they were a huge part of our identity, I would say. So, but kind of getting into the Golden Knights side of things, Chandler Stevenson looked really really good, and his line with Stone. They looked really good, but I'm not sure if they can handle the next team that we're going to be going into, and that's Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers beat the Kings in 6. I think we both actually got that right in our bracket, so that's good. Actually, no, I predicted 5, so you got that right, but I didn't.
My
But
bracket was looking really good for the first like 5 series.
yeah,
I got all 5 winners right, and I had 4 of the 5 games
yeah,
too.
jeez,
Like I had the Leafs in 6, not a big deal.
yeah,
I
yeah,
got
wow,
called that, and I had most of the other shares I got. But then
yeah,
yesterday with the Bruins and Avalanche going down, everybody's bracket just
Yeah.
yeah, in pieces.
Yeah, but so going back to the Oilers, Draisaitl has arguably been the best player in the playoffs, and I think the big thing, especially if you're an Oilers fan, that you loved about this series was that it was a complete team effort. It wasn't just the Draisaitl and McDavid show. Like you got really good additions from Klim Kostin and Kyler Yamamoto, and Stuart Skinner was good when he had to be too. So that was definitely something I would really be happy with if I was an Oilers fan. But I think one thing that we did notice was that the Kings center depth was really, really good and maybe even the best in the league as far as defensively. But it just still cannot contain what the Oilers got, right? So that's really scary for teams going forward, and especially the Golden Knights, where they don't really play that fast paced style. They more kind of slow the game down, and their best defensive players aren't fast either. Like Mark Stone's one of the slowest players in the league, and like they don't really got a lot of fast defenseman. I guess you could say like Petrangelo's steady back there, so you'll be seeing that matchup a lot, I would imagine. But as far as forwards, like I don't really think the Golden Knights have anyone on their team that's going to be able to contain McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, like you said, with the 1-2 punch of Deneau and Kopitar, I mean, those are two of the best shutdown centers in the league. Both those guys really responsible defensively, and they kind of just shadowed McDavid and Draisaitl each throughout the series. And I mean, they kind of limited them. I mean, like they were still both over a point a game. I mean, Draisaitl did most of his damage on the power play, and McDavid, he was still over a point a game. But I mean, I think we can all admit that he didn't really dominate like he can, right?
For sure.
Like, I think he only scored in two of the games. He had 3 goals in total. One of the games he had two. So yeah, he wasn't really taking over games. A lot of times he was just turning the puck over in the offensive zone. And I even noticed with McDavid, there was a couple times in the defensive zone where he lost his guy, and the Oilers or the Kings got a really good chance, and one of them they scored on. So I mean, the Kings definitely put up a challenge for the Oilers, but you know, you're not going to be able to get away with that stuff as the playoffs go on. So, and I think that the Oilers will improve with that, and McDavid especially. And I think McDavid's probably going to blow up next series because I don't, like you said, I don't think that Vegas has, the center depth to shut them down. I mean, William Karlsson is really good defensively, but other than that, you just can't shut down those two guys no matter how hard you try or who you have.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said about McDavid. I think that's another thing that you're kind of looking forward to as the Oilers fan is that like we beat a really good team in the Kings without the best player on our team and in the world, firing in all cylinders, right? Like we didn't see the McDavid that we saw this regular season. So if he can just get back to that form or even ramp it up a little bit with him being in the playoffs, right? Like that's gonna be really really scary. And like honestly, after the Bruins and after the Avalanche going down, looking not just in the Western Conference but in the whole league, like is this the Oilers to lose this playoffs? Like this is a powerhouse team with Ekholm back there too. Like I I do see an argument for this playoffs being the Oilers to lose.
Yeah, I mean, most of the favorites got knocked out. It's crazy. Like between Boston, Colorado, and Tampa, all three of those teams out in round one. Those were probably maybe three of the five favorites to win it again. So now, I mean, it's probably looking like Carolina and Edmonton, if I had to take a guess. But at the same time, Florida and Toronto, you never know, right? Like Toronto
Yeah,
has one of the best regular season teams, and if they're finally going to put it together in the playoffs, then maybe this is the year, right? Maybe they do go all the way. It would be pretty cool to see like an Oilers Leafs Stanley Cup final.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be so awesome.
Yeah, but I think it's time we go into the Eastern Conference side of things, and we're gonna go to that Bruins versus Panthers matchup. Obviously, the Bruins lost in Game Seven. Huge overtime win for the Panthers. It seems like they're really good on the road too, which is like kind of surprising, I guess. Not anything against them, but like the Bruins, they lost three straight home games, like in the series, right? So that being Game Seven and Game Five, and then also Game Two, I believe. So yeah, it was kind of just crazy to see. Like I saw a stat that they lost 7 games at home all year, and they lost three in this series and three in a row. That for
That's
that matter, right?
that's
So
crazy.
it is crazy, and I think just the Bruins and the hockey community as a whole are just stunned by this loss. Like you see Bergeron at the bench, like after the game, like his face was just like he saw a ghost or something. It was just crazy. But going into the Panther side of things, Kachuk, Bobrovsky, and Montour were three guys that really stood out to me. Especially Bobrovsky, kind of he didn't get the start in game one and game two. I think he came in game three or game four, right, for Alex Lyon.
Yeah, I think it was game three. I want to say after they,
Yeah,
yeah,
so he kind of came in halfway through the series, and like for how overpaid he is, he did his job, right? I think he's making like 7 mil or something, which is still a terrible contract, but you know what, he did his job, and that was good. But kind of going back to Bergeron, like um, it I kind of got the sense when I was watching that was his last game as a Boston Bruin, and not just that, but also in the NHL, right? So um, hopefully this guy doesn't go out on that note, but like it kind of looks this was his last game when he was hugging all his teammates and being the last guy on the ice and stuff like that. So we'll see where that goes. But what did you think about this series as a whole?
yeah. I mean, this was probably one of the most entertaining series. It was kind of disappointing in a sense, as like good playoff hockey. Like there's so many blowouts, right? Like
Yeah,
I think game two, Florida blew out Boston, and then game three and four, Boston blew out Florida. Both games in Florida. Both games were like 6-2 or something, if I remember correctly. And then game five was that I think it was that crazy game, or no, game six was the crazy like 7-5 game, just where there was like no defense or goaltending being played to that playoff level. But I just can't believe that Boston choked this. Like this is one of the worst, meltdowns I've ever seen. Like seriously, like you think of any Leafs meltdown or even like the Penguins last year versus the Rangers, I think this is worse just because of it being the 1 versus 8 seed and them having lost 7 home games all year and they lose 3 straight home games to the 8 seed. Like it's honestly embarrassing. I don't know what I would do like if I'm the Bruins from this point on, because I think, like you said, I think this is probably Bergeron's last game along with Krejci. I think they were probably going to retire either way this year, and I say that especially because of the end of that game. Bergeron, stayed at the end of the year to hug all his guys, hug all his teammates, and at the end, like he shared a moment with Marchand, and they were both kind of tearing up a little. So that was hard to watch. It always sucks seeing that. And the same thing was going on with Zach Parise. I seen like where he's probably going to retire too, and he like just sat in his locker room stall for like an hour after the game. Like everybody left, including the media and all the players, and he was just still in his gear. So it's sad to hear that, just to get eliminated like that and know that your career's probably going to be over.
yeah, for sure, and definitely kind of tough to see those guys have their careers end like that after such successful ones. But speaking of meltdowns, a team that's been known for having meltdowns pretty much the last 15, 20 years is the Leafs, and they finally got over that edge. Uh, they won 3 games on the road, so props to them, and that's really promising for the future. But it's also kind of nerve wracking when they don't win any games at home, right? So like it kind of feels like they feel that pressure from the fans and from their crowd, right? So we'll see that where that goes, but yeah, they finally got it done. Marner, Matthews, and Tavares are the guys that they needed to step up, and they did. Those three, like they haven't really had much playoff success in the past. They only have one combined series win, and that was when Tavares was with the Islanders, right? So these guys finally got it done, and I think the big thing for me in this series was that the Lightning finally showed their fatigue that they've kind of accumulated the last couple of years, going to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. So yeah, you could kind of see that they were getting tired, and I think Vasilevsky wasn't really the Vasilevsky we've seen in the past. There was a lot of kind of weak goals, or maybe not even weak, but just not Vasilevsky goals. Like probably stuff that I've seen him save in the past, right? So yeah, definitely that fatigue kind of showed, but yeah, props to the Leafs, and I'm not too sure if they're going to be able to get past the Florida, because Florida, like who would have thought they would have beat Boston, right? But yeah, this was a really good series, and I'm kind of happy for Leafs fans just to get it over with, so then that their curse is over. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a Leafs fan. I kind of thought that,
No, same.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah, like I honestly thought that the losing streak was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Just seeing them choke every year. No offense to Leafs fans, but yeah, I didn't mind them winning this year. I mean, I still was betting for them. I think the last 2 years I did take the Leafs. So I mean, last year that didn't go well, but this year they finally did win that. And you mentioned the road wins, how they had like 3 wins on the road. I thought it was really funny how after Game 5, John Cooper, in the interview, he said that it's the year of the road team. I think, and then he said something like, I think I think you guys would have been mad if the series ended tonight. So we'll see you back here for Game 7. Like we'll see you back here in Toronto for Game 7, and then the Leafs end up winning on the road, which was funny just because he said it's the year of the road team, and then he like kind of got cocky and said, "We'll see you back here for Game 7," and then the Leafs win Game 6 on the road. So I thought that was funny, but it actually is crazy the amount of road teams winning games. Like I think the road team won every single game in that series. I believe in the
I think Leafs won game one. Did they? Did they not?
no Tampa blew them out.
Oh, Leafs won game two. Right.
You're right. You're right.
Right. They won game two at home. But yeah,
But yeah,
I was
like
there.
yeah, and even in like the Florida series, like we said, they won 3 of the games on the road, and Boston took 2 of the games in Florida.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird because you never see that. It's usually always the home teams. You can really see the advantage. But just back to the Lightning. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they finally did start to show some fatigue. Everybody and just their depth is not the same as it was. Like especially like their defensemen. I think losing McDonough, kind of hurting them. And I don't think Charnak played the whole series.
No, I think he got hurt in game two. I think it was
Yeah,
on
from the
that
bunting
bunting hit.
hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he was a big loss, and really beyond Hedman and Sergachev, they didn't really have anybody else. And Hedman's kind of been, he hasn't had a great year this year. So, you know, when you don't have anybody else besides those guys, like who do they have after that? Like Zach Bogosian? Like seriously, like they had that Nick Perbix, I believe. He's all right, but yeah, like they just they just don't have the money, and especially next year, they're going to run into a lot of trouble because of the big extensions that they gave Sorelli and Chernak. And I think Sergachev as well. I think those all kick in next year, like huge long deals on a lot of money. They only have like $9 million in cap space, and they have like 7 or 8 roster spots to fill out. Like all those guys are gonna have to make like $1 million. Like they're so I think they're in a similar position as Boston. I think they're just gonna start going downhill, and I think we've seen the end of the Stanley Cup winning Tampa Bay teams.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they kind of handcuff themselves just by trying to go all in every year, and even like a guy like Tanner Jeannot that they acquired for all those picks, like he was a healthy scratch for some of this series, right? Like even that trade isn't looking too great. Even though I love Tanner Jeannot and I like him as a part of the Lightning just because he kind of fills that role of like that I guess you could say enforcer alongside Patty Maroon, but yeah, like even him being a healthy scratch and like giving up all those picks, like they're kind of giving away their future for all these guys to win now, but they're not winning now because they're too tired, right? So, uh, kind of we'll see how that goes. But going into our next series, we got the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders. Hurricanes 1-6. The Canes kind of they handled them well considering all their injuries, but I think this will be a problem for them in the future. They're going to play the Rangers or the Devils, whoever wins that series tonight. And I don't see them beating either of those teams, if I got to be completely honest. The Islanders kind of they put up a really good fight, but I feel like they kind of got beat in their own game, I guess you could say. Like they kind of that slow, just kind of like opposite of run and gun, I guess you could say. Just like slow paced, defensive, kind of just like I don't know, not boring, but just low scoring kind of game. And I feel like the Canes kind of beat them in that sense. But yeah, like Hurricanes going forward, I could definitely see them making a run to the conference finals. But I like the Rangers and Devils both more. I think.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned just how the Islanders are kind of a slower, just defensive team, just trying to shut down teams. They don't really create that much. I've noticed just in like past playoff years, I think that those type of teams usually do better against more offensive teams. I mean, you look at like the Islanders in past years. They went to the semi-final or the conference final like two straight years, I believe, right, against Tampa, and they put up good fights against Tampa in both those years. And even the Kings, like they're more of a defensive team against the Oilers, who are just an all-out offense team. They put up good fights. I mean, they went 7 last year and they went 6 this year. So like they still gave them some trouble. But I think when you kind of have those two two similar defensive type teams against one another, it makes for like the Islanders just can't shut the other team down when the other team is doing the same thing to them, if you know what I mean. Right? Like, so the Hurricanes are probably the best defensive team in hockey, and I think that that's huge in the playoffs. And Sebastian Aho is on the Hurricanes. Sebastian Aho, he's proven to be, I think, one of the best playoff performers the last bunch of years. Like he's been at least a point a game every year in the playoffs. Like he just steps it up, and he's really leading the way there offensively. It hurts not having Sveshnikov though, so we'll see how they do in the second round.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't know obviously who that team is going to be just yet as they play tonight. But the Rangers versus Devils series has been really good. Pretty much everything that we've kind of anticipated. Just like run and gun, kind of both going both ways. But Kreider has been really good. I think he's been the best player in the series. Hughes has been really good as well, but Kreider stood out to me a lot. And, yeah, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier when we were previewing this series that we weren't too sure if the Devils' young squad will be able to, like kind of perform in the playoffs, and they have to go through some adversity first. And they're not out of the first round yet by any means, but this has been a really good first, appearance for this young squad. So I think if you're a Devils fan, you got to be happy with how your young squad is, handling all this pressure of being in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we have to mention is the goalie that came in, Akira Schmid or Schmid, however you say it. He's like a rookie goalie this year. Didn't get in many games, just like a backup. But he took over for Vanacek in Game 3 after the Rangers won the first 2 games 5-1, and he just took over the series. I think the next 3 games he only gave up 2 goals. He gave up, or he had two 1 goal games and then a shutout, and the Devils won those 3 straight games. So it's crazy to see. I think he was the first goalie in their franchise history to win their first 3 playoff appearances or something. So maybe he can be a guy that they kind of can play around, and he can lead the way back there and be the goalie that Vanacek wasn't really performing to be. So maybe the Devils can move on even past the second round. We'll see. They got to get through the Rangers first. I think this is definitely the closest series like we expected. It's going 7, and it probably could go Game 7 overtime as well. So yeah, I'm excited to watch the series tonight.
Yeah, it'll be a really good game tonight, and I never heard of this like Schmid guy until this year in the regular season. I remember when the Devils were on like their huge hot streak of that, like won like 10 or 15 games in a row or something like that. Um, I was watching them a little bit, and like I never heard of him, and like this guy's really good. Like he makes a lot of like a lot of saves that I wouldn't expect a lot of guys to make. So definitely huge props to him, and also just performing this well against a goalie like Shesterkin too. That's got to be intimidating for a guy in his first playoff appearance.
Yeah, I was going to mention Shesterkin as well. It kind of reminds me of like Lundqvist, and basically his whole career. Like the team is kind of just underperforming, but he's always there to keep him in it. Like Shesterkin's been amazing yet again. I think he's got like a 930 save percentage in the playoffs. Like he's just so good, and you would just hate to see kind of another like generation, another like era of the goaltending kind of carrying, but the rest of the team letting the Rangers down. And speaking of goaltending, I forgot to mention back in the Panther series, there's this crazy stat that I seen that Sergei Bobrovsky, the Panthers goalie, that took over at the end of the series, he was the winner in the series this year and the winner, if you remember, the 2019 sweep of the Lightning. So he was the goalie in both those series. So he beat like arguably the 2 best teams in NHL history, which is pretty funny. And the funny thing is that he didn't even perform that well this year. I think he was good in 2019, but yeah, it's just a funny stat that he happened to be the goalie in both those games.
Yeah, for sure. That is pretty weird, and like arguably, like those are the two best regular season teams ever. So it's kind of weird for like him to take those teams down. But yeah, he didn't really play a lot this regular season either. Like obviously, Spencer Knight is no longer with them; he's on a leave of absence. But he started a lot of games for them this regular season, and I feel like for majority of the season it was like 50-50, right? So it's good to see him getting back to like prime Bob. So. Yeah, we'll see where the Panthers go. But moving a little bit forward into the second round now, we got a couple of series that we're just going to quickly go over and just say who we think is going to win and how many games, and kind of just for what reasons, I guess you could say. So we're gonna start in the East, and we're gonna go Leafs versus Panthers. For me, I do think the Leafs are going to win this. To be honest, I got Leafs in six. I could definitely see it going seven, but um, yeah, I think the Leafs kind of play that run and gun game similar to the Panthers, and I don't think there's many teams in the league that can do that as well as the Leafs, just with all their star power, right? So that's something that I'm really I factored in when making my prediction. But um, like I said earlier in the episode, the Panthers handle the Bruins stars really well, right? So and you could argue that the Bruins stars are as good as the Leaf stars, right? So they handle them really well. So we'll see where that goes, but nevertheless, Kachuk versus Matthews is going to be a really good treat, and they're both just having great seasons, and not to mention Marner and even like Verhaeghe's been playing great, and Montour and everything like that. So. Yeah, I got Leafs in six, but I think this can be a really close series, and I could honestly see it going either way.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an awesome series. I think the Leafs fans are definitely happy that the Panthers beat the Bruins because,
For sure, yeah.
yeah, I don't think that the Leafs were going to be able to get, exercise the Bruins demons that they've had, especially with the team the Bruins had this year. And, knowing the Bruins, they probably would have figured it out, right? They probably would have, kind of, if they were to win game seven in overtime, which was just a one shot game, they probably would have figured it out in the second round. And one thing I forgot to mention in the Bruins series is when you have a team as good as the Bruins were, and same with like the Lightning, and you don't face any adversity all year, right? Like everything is just all happy, everything's going your way. There's never any down times during the season. You kind of always just you're always up, right? Like nothing's going wrong, and you know the minute that they kind of faced some adversity when they were up 3-1 in the series and then they lost, that was finally some adversity that they were facing, especially like without Bergeron and that and Krejci, and then they lost again, and then they lost again. So like they just kind of choke artists there. Like they just lost when the first time they faced some adversity this year, and that just can happen when you're just always everything's going well, right?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of think that maybe is the common theme when why President's Trophy winners don't usually win the cup, right? So they just don't really face any adversity. But as far as prediction, what do you got?
Yeah, I forgot to mention. I don't know. I mean, I think that the Panthers, they don't really have much in net, right? Like, Bobrovsky has not been good for years, honestly. Like, he's been pretty, he's been playing poor for years, not close to the $10 million contract. He's around like a 900 save percentage for like the last 4 years. That's not very good. And Alex Lyon, I just wouldn't trust him to play as good as he kind of did at the end of the regular season, because so I think eventually this with the goalies they have on the roster, they're just going to run out, right? Like you can't have guys like that keep playing so good. So I think because of that, and because the Leafs have Samsonov who played really well, I think the Leafs are going to win in seven. I think that they were obviously the better team in the regular season, but it's going to be a really close series, and you never know in the playoffs, right? Like, if Florida can get over Boston, then they can probably get over Toronto. So it'll be an awesome series.
Yeah, we've definitely seen crazy things happen. But the next and the other series in the Eastern Conference is going to be the Hurricanes versus the Rangers or Devils. I kind of previewed this quickly earlier in the episode, but I think whoever wins from that Rangers Devils series will go on to beat the Hurricanes. But I think it should be a strong series regardless. It's kind of hard to give a certain amount of games or anything, but um, just depending on who the opponent is, right? Obviously, so uh, I'm not going to be able to give a games or anything on this one just yet, just because we don't know who's advancing. But I think um, whoever wins that Rangers Devil series will go far.
Yeah, I honestly like I've been watching the Rangers Devil series pretty closely, and I think that both teams have kind of been disappointing. Like I feel like on both ends, like it's there for the grabs. Like if you just play how you can and how you should, then you can take over the series and win. But it just kind of hasn't really happened yet. Like you know, Zibanejad and Panarin didn't have any goals in the first 5 games. They each had like 4 points combined, 2 points each. And like, so nobody was really showing up for the Rangers besides Kreider. He had like 5 of their 11 goals or something. It was crazy. And on the Devils side, I mean, besides Jack Hughes, who's been really good, Hamilton's been good as well. But I don't think Jesper Bratt's been very good, or Jesper Bratt, I think it is. I don't know. But like, yeah, I think both the teams have kind of been underwhelming. So for that reason, I'm going to take the Hurricanes. And like I said, I think they're probably the best defensive team in hockey. They have guys like Jacob Slavin back there and Brett Pesce, and Brady Shea's been really good, and even Brent Burns has been better defensively this year. So yeah, I think the Hurricanes are probably going to take that series in 7. It feels weird, like picking all these series to go 7 games, but this year there wasn't a single sweep. Like almost every series went 6 or 7 games. Like so, yeah, I think that this is just kind of the year of long series. Like the matchups have just been so close. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, and we've pretty much just getting started. But uh, I think after what you said about the Hurricanes decor with Shea and Slave and everything, I think I'm gonna go. I think Rangers would beat the Hurricanes, but I don't think the Devils would beat the Hurricanes. So depending on who it is, I'm gonna take, like I said, Rangers over Hurricanes because I know how the Rangers can play, but I don't think the Devils would beat the Hurricanes. So that's gonna be my final prediction. But now moving on to the west side of things, we got the Stars versus the Kraken. This is gonna be another really good series. I don't think anyone really expected the Kraken to go on. So this will be a really good series. And uh, I think I'm gonna go Stars in 7. um, I could see it being another low scoring series. The Kraken don't really have like that one star or who's kind of been producing for them, and but they've also been playing good defensively. They've kind of been shutting down the Avalanche, right? So I could definitely see this being a low scoring series, and just with Ottinger back there too, right? So I'm going to go Stars in 7. I could definitely see a Stars in 6 though. But yeah, either way, I don't think the Kraken really have much of a chance. But you know what? I had them getting swept from the Avalanche too, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that I was going to take Dallas over whoever won that series. I know that I took Colorado originally, but after seeing how they played in the first round, I don't think they played like they probably should have. So yeah, I like how Dallas played. So yeah, I'm going to take Dallas as well. The craziest thing about the Seattle series and how they won was they were without their 2 best forwards, I would say, in McCann and Burakovsky. Burakovsky missed the whole series, and McCann got injured. I think it was like in the first period of game 2 on the Makar hit. So like their 2 best forwards out for basically the whole series, and they still happen to beat the defending champs. So yeah, we'll see if those guys are back. I think that'll play a big role in it. Although Seattle does seem like a team that just kind of like next man up, if you know what I mean. Like just yeah, like one guy goes down, the other guy replaces him like that. They called up the AHL guy Ty Cartier or whatever his name is, and he scored a goal in like his first period or whatever in the NHL in the playoffs. So yeah, they're just kind of like a team with good depth and good coaching, and that's why they're kind of like next man up. But I'm still gonna go Dallas probably in 6 games.
All right, so now moving on to our last series. We've got the Golden Knights versus the Oilers. This is definitely going to be the series that I'm going to be watching the most. I kind of think I hate to say it, I'm kind of adopting, the Oilers as my playoff team going forward. I just love watching them play. And yeah, so in this series, as far as my prediction, I'm going to go Oilers in 6. Um, yeah, we kind of talked earlier about this, but the Oilers' offense will explode against the Golden Knights for sure. Brossoit isn't really going to be able to make up for the lack of defense that the Golden Knights have both on the forward and the defensive side of things. So I could definitely see McDavid having a huge series, and as well as Draisaitl keeping up what he's been doing. I can see the Stone line trying to defend Draisaitl and McDavid, but they're just not strong enough defensively, right? And like we said earlier, there are other defensive centers are not really that fast, I guess you could say. So yeah, just for those reasons, I got Oilers in six, and I think it could be a huge series for McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Oilers in six probably. Uh, like you said, like I just think that Vegas isn't good enough defensively. I think that LA was better than Vegas defensively,
For sure.
and Vegas is definitely a bit better offensively. So maybe it could go seven. Who knows? But yeah, I think like you said, the Oilers' offense is going to blow up. I think McDavid is almost due. I know that he was still like a point a game or whatever, but we've come to expect more from him. Just kind of take over games like he did kind of last year in the playoffs, and I think that's going to come, and I think yeah he's going to dominate next round. And yeah, the Oilers are going to take it in six.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what this Oilers team can do for the rest of the playoffs now that these kind of juggernaut teams are out. But yeah, hopefully they can get past the Knights because they gave the Jets a pretty big problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on the goaltending. It's weird. It seems like a lot of teams are kind of struggling in net this year in the playoffs. Like you think of the Panthers, they didn't really know who they had. Even the Bruins, like Allmark struggled, and Swayman came in and played pretty bad in Game 7, and the Devils with Vanacek who played bad, and then they brought in Schmid, and now like even both the Golden Knights and the Oilers, they kind of have question marks in that. Skinner hasn't been that great, and he got pulled the one game, and Campbell came in. So I mean, you probably stick with Skinner, and Brossoit's played pretty well for the Golden Knights, but he doesn't have like that much experience as a starter, especially in the playoffs. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see which one of those goalies can kind of take over and outplay the other one.
Yeah, for sure. So it'll definitely be really exciting to watch and everything. So I think with that all being said, that's going to close out for episode 19 of the Elbows Up podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.